This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Good morning, I'm Justin Warmoth. On today's program, a conversation with Central Florida Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy about the health and economic impacts of the coronavirus. All right, Congresswoman, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, how are you doing? How's the family doing?
Thanks so much for having me on and for asking. My family and I are doing well, and hopefully you are too.
Thank you. Yeah, happy Mother's Day as well.
Thanks.
Sure, hope you have some great things planned for today. I do want to get into, first off, the unemployment numbers. You know, they're staggering. You can throw out any adjective you want. How are we going to recover from this?
Yeah, you know, the unemployment numbers are staggering, and the constituent stories, the folks who are calling my office, their circumstances are heartbreaking. I think in part I'm focused on trying to keep people tethered to their jobs and have been working on an employee retention tax credit that was a part of CARES 1, and we're looking to expand that. And then if we can't keep them tethered to their jobs and they are unemployment, really trying to provide some oversight on the state system so that those unemployment benefits that the federal government have expanded actually get out to the people we intended to help. And then I'm on the White House task force for restarting the economy, and we're having conversations about, you know, once we get through this mitigation stage and it is safe for us to consider reopening the economy, what it is that we need to do to have a safe restart.
Mm-hmm. You know, what did it mean to you, just talking about the White House task force to reopen the economy? What does it mean to you to represent Central Florida in such a prominent role there?
Well, I'm really grateful to have an opportunity and a seat at the table with the president and my colleagues in both the House and the Senate on this, because I think Central Florida has some really unique challenges that need to be addressed. We are a community that's heavily dependent on tourism. We have a lot of folks who are in the hospitality business, and you know, what does our restart look like? It's going to look different than it looks across this country, and I want to make sure that our interests and our needs are top of mind when leadership looks at restarting the economy.
The unemployment system in the state of Florida has failed so many people. It sounds like, yes, it is better than when we started. There's no doubt. How would you describe how this has gone for Floridians trying to get benefits?
It has been a horrible experience for Floridians trying to get unemployment benefits. And it's because we have a system that in normal times is not functioning properly, and in the crisis just collapsed upon itself. And the reason we have that system is that we've had state government for decades who have a cynical view of Florida workers and an unsympathetic and maybe even indifferent perspective on people who become unemployed. And so they built a system that was intended not to deliver unemployment benefits, to make it as difficult as possible. And come to find out, you can't rebuild a system with a different business requirement now that you're in a crisis, and actually understand that you have to get these resources out to a suffering community. I've been terribly disappointed in the state government. They're just the combination of incompetence and indifference has been shameful.
Mm-hmm. You want an investigation. Talk to me about this, what you'd like to see come out of this investigation. It sounds like the governor is also on board with this.
I'm glad the governor wants to have some accountability over the unemployment system. You know, they have had multiple audits where there were flags that said, hey, the system has problems. And yet, despite the fact that they took federal dollars to implement the unemployment system, the system didn't work. And so I think there has to be some level of accountability and oversight. And that's the role of Congress, and specifically the committee I sit on. I sit on the Ways and Means Committee, and unemployment is in our jurisdiction. So I've called on the Department of Labor's Inspector General to investigate Florida's unemployment system. The fact that it is failing Floridians at our time of greatest need is unacceptable, and we need to find out why and hold those people accountable, even the governor himself.
To know that it cost what it did, taxpayer dollars, to pay for this system is disheartening as a taxpayer, and to know what could come out of this down the road and how much more tax dollars are being thrown at this system to try to make it work is another thing. This is a lasting impact.
Yeah, what I'm learning in this is that no amount of money can overcome incompetence. And over the last decade, the federal government has given Florida $1.6 billion for an unemployment system. So that's above and beyond the numbers that are cited for the specific construct of the system. You know, we need to find out what they did with that taxpayer dollar and why it is that we have the system that we have that is failing in this moment.
You know, you talked about tourism, hospitality, everything that Central Florida represents and relies so heavily on. Do you see us picking things back up in that sector June 1st or closer to January 1st?
I always say, whether it's from my time in DOD and we're talking about military operations or here in response to this particular crisis, that it's not calendar driven, it has to be conditions driven. And so what are the conditions on the ground? What do we have in terms of availability of testing, the ability to do contact tracing, supported isolation and treatment if people do get sick, and then you know, in the meantime, the social distancing guidelines that has helped to buy us time so that the healthcare system can build out capacity. So where are we on those various standards? It will determine what our reopening looks like, as opposed to being able to pick a date on a calendar.
The governor has liked to sort of tout what the state has done in controlling things. And then when you look across the country, the numbers are lower than a lot of the projections, right? Do you think he has done a good job in that realm of testing and making sure that a spike has not happened in the state like other states have had?
I think the credit really goes to our fellow Floridians and our local leadership. We can thank all of our neighbors and our community, especially here in Central Florida, for closely following social distancing guidelines. As you know, the local mayors and local government officials were out in front of the state in implementing stay-at-home orders, and that's made a huge difference. It's allowed our healthcare system not to be overwhelmed by this threat. But you know, we'll need to continue to lean on our leadership here, especially in Central Florida, for having and count on their measured and thoughtful approach as we look to moving back to a new normal.
We have to take a short break. We'll have more with Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy right after this. Stay with us.
This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Welcome back. I'm Justin Warmoth. My conversation about the coronavirus and how the federal government is responding continues now with Central Florida Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy.
You know, the president, it seems, wants to open things back up, and he has said, yes, we did our part when it comes to social distancing and mitigation factors, and we did what we needed to do, but it sounds like he is ready and he wants states to follow his orders and say, listen, open things back up and we'll deal with what comes. Is that how you were seeing it, and is that a good idea?
I think we have to continue to follow the advice of health professionals who are on the front lines of this public health emergency and use their best advice as our benchmark for reopening. To date, the official things that have come out of the White House was that first general outline. And, you know, I'm heartened that he didn't pick a calendar day, but he set some broad guidelines around what benchmarks and what need to have been met. And I certainly hope that we continue to use that kind of approach based on the advice of healthcare professionals as we look to reopening. I get, though, that people are suffering economically, and that can be a big motivator for people wanting to reopen. But we have to understand that this is a public health crisis and that the health conditions should drive our policy and our behaviors, because people's lives are at stake. In the interim, while we are trying to do what we can from the health perspective and race towards treatments and vaccines and availability of testing and tracing and all of those things, the government has a role to support employers and employees in this so that they can have the economic wherewithal to get through the crisis and do what they need from a public health perspective.
Between Congress and the Fed, trillions have been helicoptered in to save a lot of jobs, hopefully help people kind of get through this. Do you think another relief package is needed?
Yes, we're in the process of writing another relief package, call it CARES 2.0. And in that, I think we will be able to secure state and local government support. At this moment, where our state and local government, our firefighters, our police departments, our teachers are on the front lines doing heroic kind of work in difficult circumstances, we can't allow them to lose their jobs because states and local government have become insolvent. And so we'll be providing additional support to them. And then for my part, I'm looking at providing additional support for employers and employees through the Employee Retention Tax Credit. It's incredibly important that we keep workers tethered to their jobs and to their health benefits. In a public health crisis, you want to make sure that people have access to health care. And so I think that's the best way for us to do that. There'll be a number of other things in that package because I think there's more to be done.
What does this look like, though, in 10 years? A lot of people have raised concerns about the money being dumped into the economy and what that means down the road. Is it fair to ask that question? And what do you think it looks like in 10 years?
I actually think it's a lesson about the last 10 years. In the good times that we had, we should have been more fiscally responsible. We shouldn't have passed the Republican tax cut that threw us $2 trillion into the hole and put us in a fiscally unstable situation that we were in when the crisis arrived. But now that the crisis is here and we have to provide the support that is needed to get this country through this. But we have to do so in a way where there is some accountability for the money that's being spent. As you've said, it's taxpayer dollars. And so it's taxpayer dollars that are being paid today by taxpayers today or by our children in the future. And so that means oversight. That means having people make sure that those taxpayer dollars are going to the places that they were intended and that they're not being misused. So, we have to spend money right now, but we should do so in a responsible way.
I do want to ask you this, and it might be a little too early to start thinking about it, but it kind of just came to me. The elections in the fall and voter turnout. I know vote by mail has been something that a lot of people have talked about in making sure that that is accessible to the people who do not feel comfortable going to the polls in an environment like this where the vaccine will not be ready by November or during the primaries as well. How do you see that shaping up in the fall when it comes to going to the polls and the elections?
I have been working on election security even before the pandemic, and now I think not only are we trying to secure our elections from interference from foreign actors, but we also have to make sure that our elections are safe for the American voter. People need to have alternative ways in which to vote where they feel like they can keep themselves personally safe from a health perspective in the midst of a pandemic. And so I imagine also that in this next pack, we'll be looking at resources for vote by mail. One of the things is that Florida has been given in a previous COVID package. Florida, all the states were provided resources to use in executing our elections this fall. We're one of the few states where the governor has not pulled down that money and has asked for an extension. So we're calling on that office, the governor's office, to bring down the $20 million for Florida to help secure and make safe our elections this fall. There's no reason to be dragging his feet. They were 6 months out from an election, and Florida has these federal resources being provided to them. They need to use them.
Masks have become unfortunately, have become a partisan issue and a political issue. Do you think people should wear masks when they're out in public? And do you wear a mask when you're out in public?
The public health officials have recommended that we wear masks out in public, not only to keep yourself safe, but also to keep others safe. And yes, I do wear a mask when I'm out in public because I don't want to be responsible for anybody else getting sick or spreading the virus without knowing it, because a lot of people can be carriers of the COVID virus and not even be aware of that. We have a responsibility to each other in this moment, to our neighbors and our community, to do what we can to slow the spread of this virus. And I'm certainly going to be somebody who follows the public health officials' guidance and does what I can, and I'll do what I can to keep my community safe. This is not a political issue. This virus does not care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. It will infect people all the same. And, I think love of country and patriotism and a commitment to your community means that you do your part in this pandemic.
One more thing, a message to the people of Central Florida, your constituents who maybe have fallen on hard times, maybe have dealt with loved ones passing away because of the virus. Your overall message to the people of Central Florida as we work to get through this.
Well, we are in this together, and we will get through this together. If you have specific needs, call my office. I have caseworkers and a team who is here standing by to help you in whatever way we can, provide guidance and point you to the right resources or advocate on your behalf. So count me as somebody who's shoulder to shoulder with you in this. And I just hope you all stay safe, be well, and we'll get through it together.
My thanks to Congresswoman Murphy for joining us this week. As always, you can stay up to date on the coronavirus anytime by heading to clickorlando.com. I'm Justin Warmoth. Have a great Sunday, and to all the moms, happy Mother's Day.